Ha! There is actually a bit of a legend. I'm not gonna lie, this is not necessarily a true story, but there is a legend that an Italian gardener and economist called Wilfredo Pareto, he once was looking at his peas. It was in his garden, and he realized something very special about is the yield of his pods and his gardening with peas. That only 20% of his pods were delivering 80% of the results. Now, it is a legend. It's said that this happened, it didn't happen. It just makes for a nice analogy, let's be honest. It did exist though. Pareto was a real economist and he did really do study the effect of the spread of wealth and economy in Italy at the time. So there is some truth in there, just in case. And basically, what he realized is that 20% of our efforts will yield most of our results, which kind of makes sense. Not everything we do has got equal impact. And even if we know that, I think there's always a chance for us to, in hopefully seasons of quieter or in seasons of reflection, to think about what is our 20% and how can we protect it. And there are many ways that we can do that. If we're looking at what's really working in our marketing, one of my favorite things to do is looking at what we're already doing and how to make it better. So hopefully today I'm going to give us a tool to find our vital few and find some opportunities, hopefully not adding too much of the new, but making the most of what we got. In case you don't know me, my name is Fab. Hi, I'm founder of Marketing School. I've been 16 years in marketing, but I've been running my own business for 12 years. And a lot of what I do is really helping people with systems, processes, and tools and understanding how to make their marketing work for them in many, many ways. That is the incredibly boring and dry kind of speaker slide. However, I am much more than that. I am straight talking Italian, should I say. My hands are actually not moving too much. Is the blessing of the online screens. Sims loving. Shout out in the chat if anybody else knows, loves, played Sims. Let me know. Band t-shirt addict. Marketing fairy godmother. The last bit came from our students. I didn't call myself that. There is some Sims love in there. I always love when that happens. Even if it's, even when it's the old school Sims 2, I'll take it. I'll take any Sims. There's a lot of magic in that. But what I want to try and help us today is a bit of reflection about how can we protect our 20%. Okay. So we're going to look at different things and I'm going to build a few steps. Then I'm going to give us a tool to use. And then I'm going to give us the end of these steps to do. So you definitely have a chance to try it for yourself. If that tool, it's an app, it's a mini app in Canva. I'm obsessed with little apps in Canva. You can also use your notepads, or anything else to write down. So don't worry. So good old Lauren Hill, I'm going to have her move on. Sister Act 2, one of the best comedy, especially musical comedies ever. The first thing that we want to do, we want to protect what we're doing, is thinking about the goals that we want to set for ourselves. So especially if you're looking at the next, I'm going to say, coming into the end of summer, maybe the last quarter of the year, okay? And this leads me to an idea of pushing ourselves a bit when it comes to the outcomes that we want for our goals. And this is a little story that I don't know if you know about the 10 million check. Give me a little reaction in the chat or in the reactions if you know of it, if you heard of it. In 1985, Jim Carrey was a broke, unknown comic. And then what did he do? He drove his little beat-up Toyota up to Mulholland Drive. He was looking over LA. And he wrote himself a check for $10 million for active services rendered, not knowing what that movie would be. You might know which movie it was. I'll tell you in a minute. It was dated post-Thanksgiving, 1995. So give himself 10 years. Yeah. And he kept it in his wallet until he almost disintegrated. Yeah. And then what happened is that just before that date, he learned that it would be paid quite a lot. Shocking, 10 million for Dumb and Dumber. This story is told many, many times. And it isn't said that when his father died in 1994, he actually slipped the check into his casket. And this is a story that he told Oprah, but also in other places as well. And it's obviously thinking big. And what I say to my students is always, when you're setting up a goal, which is the first step into actually auditing where we want to go, is like, why do we want to go there? Is thinking about how can we give ourselves the best chances to win. So whenever we're setting a goal, I always like to encourage my students to have a good outcome, a good baseline. We're going to think about a very simple example of that for ourselves. And then fuck yeah outcome. I didn't ask if I could swear. Oops, sorry, YouTube. Um, yeah, outcome. Otherwise, YouTube is going to blink us for the rest of this conversation. I do apologize. And it's like a more ambitious version of that goal. So instead of, let's say, having 10 new conversations on LinkedIn in the next month, I'm going to use month just because it feels a bit right. I'm going to push to have 20, right? So thank you for the content warning. So that could be a good outcome is to get 10 new conversations. Oh yeah, outcome that works it. Could be 20. Okay. So especially when we're setting out our goals, we want to know what our focus is. And then I always push us to have a range of that goal. So can you think for yourself, where do you think you fall? Do you feel you're always the conservative, or do you feel sometimes we dream big? There's nothing wrong, but I find that we fall into either of the camps. Not everybody does the same. So regardless of what you do, Tyler is like going big. That's amazing. Then you can give yourself that sliding scale. If you're still very conservative, whenever you set up a goal, then give yourself something that pushes you out, right? And maybe that's what kind of finds a role here as well, which I love, is that maybe you are using that double split of acknowledging there's going to be a realistic outcome. And then from that, or I would say a conservative outcome, and then pushing yourself with that kind of like ambitious voice and finding them both. So that can be a really powerful thing. So that's the first thing that we actually are going to do. Whether we are whispering the big goals or we're whispering the more conservative outcomes, it doesn't matter. We're going to try to build both as well. And I love that we all have that kind of different dichotomy as well. It reminds us that we can all fall into one of the camps. Give me a little, you can use the chat, you can use the reactions, you can use your thumbs. I'll try and look at the thumbs. Have you ever heard of SWOT? SWOT as a thing. Some people are saying yes. If you don't worry, I'll explain it to you. So if you have heard of it, that's amazing. If you haven't, I'm going to give us an example of what it is. So it's something that we use in marketing a lot. Okay. So again, marketer by trade, obviously. And a great example of a very ruthless way of doing this sort of analysis. I'm not going to bore us with where that comes from. I have a book that talks about that. In my book, I talk about that too. I'll give you an example of Lego, which is an interesting company to use. But by 2003, things really needed to change. We're talking about losing hands over fist in money. One of the things was they realized that they were actually spreading themselves too thin, which weirdly enough, sometimes in our small little world, we do as well. We tend to do as well, especially if you're a little bit of a magpie. So this honest audit that they run was very, very much based on a SWOT template. And what it was about understanding, obviously, our strengths is the S, and understanding that the main things were the actual product and the community behind it. And then looking at the weakness, which, as I foreshadowed, was the complexity. And it was really about looking at lots of the different things that they were doing and understanding which ones were actually hindering them. And then there is threats and opportunities. That's the O and that's the T, okay? And these are actually, just to give you a bit of a refresher, in this case, it was really for Lego, it was start building an online community, which if you never heard of, is called the Adults Fan of Lego. That's how it started. And they really, this was kind of independently built by fans, but Lego piggybacked on it. And it basically used the principles of the SWOT as something that is a good refresher to look at what we're doing great, what is hindering, but also what is around us that can support us. So as a reminder, the strengths is what you're brilliant at, or which channels, which places you want to show up, or you're strong in, or you have a great presence. It really does depend on what you're focusing, what your goal is. And then weaknesses are the internal bottlenecks. Is there anything internally that you feel might stop you? It could be time, resources is a big one. It can be anything that can be also related to a team if you have a team, anything like this. And then the opportunities is external. What is happening inside your world, yeah, that actually you can harness. So it can be the audience that you have, your network. It can be just the industry. If you live in an industry that changes very quickly, I do is marketing. And then the threats is anything that might put pressure on you that is external. Again, it can be changes in the industry negatively, right, instead of positively. but it can also be anybody else doing similar things in a similar space, right? So looking at that and kind of understanding how does that work. And this is all well and good. So when we're auditing, a SWOT is really helpful too. But it doesn't stop there. If you really want to use all this knowledge, because usually you fill the SWOT, you write it all down, and you're like, thanks, that's great. What I like to do is then build connections. Yippee-ki-yay! Which means I then start asking the right questions around what I'm learning. So how can I actually use a strength to grab an opportunity? So instead of reinventing the wheel, I'm looking at everything that I'm writing down and I'm trying to match it up and connect it. A bit like, wait for it, Lego. I didn't do this on purpose. Just natural. This is how good I am. Anyway, sorry. How can we fix a weakness to actually neutralize a threat? Okay. How can we leverage a strength to protect ourselves from a threat? So all of these are little connections that we make by actually building all the things that we want to do. Again, as building blocks, as I said. So what we find usually is that we set a goal. We look at the ecosystem. I'm like, what am I good at? What is hindering me? What is the problem? And then we leave it like that. You can actually start building action steps based on the connections that you're going to make. And this is what we're going to do together. Going to do little bites. We're going to do this first half. We're not done because that's one bit of the audit. But this is the first part. If we don't set a goal, set some interesting outcomes. If we don't take some time to look at the strengths and the weaknesses and maybe find some connections, then we can't really know what to prioritize and try and find a bit of an action step for that. So there is a power of a link that I'm going to put in the chat that also you will be able to find in the YouTube or whatever you're watching this. So that's not a problem. Again, forever giving kudos to my friends at Canva because they are the best. I am going to triple check now. 1 second, everybody. Because you know when you save the link and then you have a little bit of a because there's 2 versions of this and I want to give you the correct one. I do apologize. I had a crisis of, there you go. Okay, so the Canva app is in there. The QR code works as well if you want it in there. By the way, good that I did that because that is the one that I wanted. And basically what we're going to do, we're going to build the first 3 steps. So I'm going to show the steps to you in a second. And it's basically what we just talked about. So this is what this little cutie looks like. I also have it obviously open here. So if I relink it, it will be reopening in the right place. Little moment of panic, but there she is. And basically it goes back to what I just told you about. So we're going to look at the next 30 days, knowing in the next quarter what you want to achieve. Do you want to grow an audience? Do you want to launch something? Do you want to get more clients? Do you want to get a new job? Is it for your personal brand? I don't mind. I'm going to run us through it. And then as I'm doing that, with a little background music, these first 3 steps, you can also write down anything in the chat if it comes to mind for these 2. But the app is going to have at the end a bit of a snapshot and a bit of a summary. You can reuse this as much as you want for as long as the design is up. You can reuse it as many times as you want if you find it useful. Well, the whole idea is that we're going to map the goal like I told you, like we shared a couple of things, outcomes. The great is the hell yeah. I just wanted to keep it a bit more PC. Then you're going to write a strength, a weakness, an opportunity, and a threat. Again, especially if you need any help, you can let us know and be like, this is the goal. I'm not sure what my strengths could be or where should I find them. And then you're going to start writing down some ideas that come from the pairings. How can you use this strength to help you capitalize on an opportunity? See whatever comes up. You're not going to have loads and loads and loads of time. So even if you just write down some simple ideas, that's amazing. And hopefully you can even just use this as a way to get yourself to get some ideas through. So but the power invested by me, I'm going to see if this works because I don't know if I put the audio, but if it doesn't, you just let me know in the chat. It might not, but I can always reshare it. There you go. And since we're very meta today for the joy of everybody involved, this is also, if I can put it down, I can. This is copyright friendly, so no issues on putting it back on YouTube if you have to. Because sometimes that can be an issue, but it shouldn't be. You're going to have about 5 minutes. That's a great question. as a reminder, the chat right now, especially because everybody else is working, is a great space for you to drop any questions or thoughts, both on the goal or maybe just of some elements of your SWOT, maybe when you're stuck. This is what you'll see. I'm going to actually make it up for us. If you're more like just absorbing and wanting to write it down, you can just have a little look at this kind of mock-up that we're doing here. So hopefully the goal comes quite easily. Just make it something that you think it's really going to be helpful for your marketing, whether it's a company or a personal brand. Remember, the strength is about what you already have that you can amplify. Maybe it's time, maybe it's focus, maybe it's a very engaged audience. And a lot of the time, the weaknesses are internal, okay? They might be about you or your company or your team. I love Raina's question as well. I'm gonna let it sink. I'm gonna read it. And I think everybody's gonna have different answers, and I think that's really the power of that. But where do you source your goals? How do you know what you want? Obviously, if anybody else has got some ideas, I would love for them to write them as well. If it helps, I like to work backwards. I like to look at some of the values that I have, and based on the values that define how I want to lead my working life and my personal life. Then I look at how can I make sure that I held these values, spending more time with my family. What does it mean concretely? And then I break it down that way. And with my work, it works the same. And I find there's so many ways that you can source them. And a lot of people do visual. They do collages, they do vision boards. And looking at what they see inspires them to know that's what I want. So I'm going to give you another minute, by the way. And if you're still working through it, you can thinking about, the opportunities that you have, and as I said, the threats. I'm just going to do that quickly. And maybe the threat is the noise, the LinkedIn one was quite an easy one. And I think the one that maybe you're going to spend a bit more time is those connections. And then I'll tell you a bit more about all those numbers. But if there's anything that comes to mind, and that's kind of where you get some tailored actions with your pairings. Whether it is, make a list of your most engaged kind of connections on LinkedIn, or put a timer on for 10 minutes to connect with people every single Monday. The pairings is really where you're going to start getting some simple actions, and you will see what works best for you. So hopefully you had a bit of time to do that. You can always continue it in the next, by the way, if you're just you just keep it open and you can just continue with that. I just want to explain what we're going to do next, because there's going to be a couple of really nice ways to bring it all together. If you have any questions or any thoughts, especially to come from the beginning, I'm going to give us a second while I drink some water, because everybody, including the replay, needs to know that hydration matters. You can also unmute if it's easier. If you want to write in the chat, it means I can just kind of pick it up as we go, but whatever you want, I just want to give us a bit of space for that before I jump into the next half. Hydration matters. And I will, again, continue, and obviously more time for questions at the end. If you even just want to unmute, is never an issue. So going back to this bad boy. Then, by the way, I'm very impressed by everybody. But yes, Isa is stepping for screen 3. Yes, that's what I love because I know that we want to go forwards, but well done. I'm going to explain the rest. Well done, everybody. So, what we're going to do then, continuing, obviously with this step as well, you'll see there's going to be some numbers, and these numbers are based on the ICE framework, which basically models 3 things. This was created by Sean Ellis, by the way, just in case you needed to know. And it was it was running the early growth at Dropbox. There I mentioned it sounds like he was a generalist himself. Maybe, I don't know. Don't quote me on that. I just know that he created the ICE. And what it is 3 things we want to focus on when we are looking at prioritizing. Being a growth lead means there was a lot of ideas, especially for Dropbox. Okay? Impact. How much does this action move your needle towards your goal? Confidence. How sure are you that is going to be actually working? Obviously, this is probably the one. Both of these are also based on your gut feeling, on the data you have, on the knowledge you have. I appreciate a lot of it comes from us and what we think. If you don't have the data to back it up, I also appreciate that. The one that maybe is the easiest for us to know is ease. How simple or low friction is it going to actually be required to execute it? So if it is booking 10 minutes every week to respond to comments on LinkedIn, how easy is it going to be? How much friction is there going to be? So that is the one that potentially we can kind of know based on our resources and the support that we have and things like that. So I think that's really important as well to think about. Da, 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 da. And then based on this, I think that's where you can actually look at then effort versus impact and what we're going to focus on, because there's plenty of things that we can do. But I like to focus on quick wins, only because quick wins can give us accountability. And that's what I want us for the end of this session, okay? So it means something that is high impact and lowerish effort, because these we can do faster and we can actually hopefully get them done. We will find major projects sometimes that actually have high impact, but also high effort. So this is what we're going to be honest about, the level of ease. Then we have some stuff that is hard slog. And a lot of this stuff you can either delegate, automate, or simplify. And also the fill in, which might be maintenance, things that usually tend to be routine, things that we kind of know that we need to do that, but potentially don't have as much of an impact right now. So basically the combination of all of these will give us some answers and some understanding. Once we're going to get these bad boys and we're going to get an understanding of that, we're then going to look at the quick wins and try to, as I say, build accountability upon it. Talking about, obviously, they're protecting our time and sometimes doing less and focusing on what matters. There's one final example I want to bring to us just to kind of round up before we do our final exercise as well here, which is an app that you might have not heard of. If you have, let me know in the chat if you heard of it. Bourbon is a check-in app with kind of gambling style points, plans, photos, the whole lot. This was Kevin Strystrom's app. This was his first app. So he and his friend Mike sat down with the usage data and asked one question: what are people actually using? Okay, so they were looking at their own quick wins. What are the things that people are going back to again and again and again that we don't need to signpost, we don't need to remind people to do? And there were photos, comments, and likes. That was it. Nothing else really they could give a damn about. That's what they used it for. So they rebuilt the whole app in about 8 weeks for that. Yes, sir. Ding, 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 ding. I can't get the reaction. Maybe I can. No, I cannot. It's so hard to find. Tyler, imagine like a little rockets kind of flying here and now. Because Tyler Live remembered which app that was. It is the Gram. Thank you for giving yourself rockets. If you can't see it, you're missing out. So yeah, 18 months later, Facebook, yes, everybody else give me rockets. It bought the app, now known as Instagram. And they bought it for, quite a billion. So not bad. But what was interesting is that it's just a reminder that a lot of the time is this kind of work and this kind of reflection not only helps us understanding our goals, helps us understanding what we can do towards them, but also out of all the things that we could do, which ones could we focus on a bit more? Again, I'm not promising that from this everybody will get their own Instagram app and or the likes, but you know what I mean. So basically what we're going to do, as I said, once we rank things based on a framework, and this app does it for us because you can do it manually, but I'm terrible at maths. I don't know if there's any other creatives in the room, but I am terrible at math. I used to cry my math homework, so I got an app to do it for me. It will basically help you understanding kind of like where you're at, and it will identify a quick win or a couple of quick wins for us. Once you do that, all I ask us, and I ask my students all the time, is to build accountability. Ideally, you can do one thing today. I mean, depending on where you are or when you're watching this, it might be it's almost the end of the day. Maybe what you do is add this to your notepad, to your to-do list as something that you're going to flesh out this week. It doesn't have to be a big commitment. It can be anything small that you're going to do as well. And then what you will do each week to stay accountable is the other part, and that is the repetition. That is everything that we're going to do. There is repeatable that we're going to do again and again and again. And ideally, it's a simple thing that you can do that will compound. So if we're going to go back to the LinkedIn example, I'm going to use, for example, is going to be connecting with people consistently as well. And that is where we're identifying the wins, and we're actually building a bit of a plan for ourselves. So we're already done, or we started. You can continue now. We're going to have another 5 minutes, so you have the time. Step 1, 2, 3, basically. And inside that third screen, you're already going to have the third screen. I apologize, that was a mistake. You will have the rating as well. I built it in it because I thought it was going to be easier. And basically, if we go back to it, and then I'll put a little timer on, you'll see it right here. So as you're writing out, if you need to finish some of the ideas of what you can do, any actions that you can take, then you can start looking at the impact, the confidence, and the effort. And you can kind of start building on it, and it will automatically tell you, this feels like a hard slog. So that's what we're going to start with, trying to do that. And then I just have to show us in a second, because I'll show you as you're doing. It will show you a bit of an example of what this looks like, so that you get an idea where you're standing before you're going to commit to tiny little actions. So you can do it yourself. I'm going to get us here. You can do it yourself. Just remember the ICE, remember how to rate. You can see it here if it helps. And you can go all the way to the end where you're going to have hopefully a bit of a summary of everything. What I'll do, I'll give us a second. You can also write some questions if you have them in the chat or any notes. And then after that, you can kind of go back to it and then get those kind of writing points. But if you want to follow along with me, you can too. So it's completely up to you. I'm just going to give us about 30 seconds to settle as well. I had to put an elevator song, by the way. It was absolutely necessary. I'm gently back. I will show us the next couple of steps in a second. Also, just to make anybody laugh, we had one session when I kept the same elevator music for the whole thing, and we had about 5 different little bits. Somebody just said, please, just silence. I can't stand elevator music no more. So that's why I use it sparingly, because she has her expiration days sometimes. So as you're still working through it, I'm just giving you another 3 minutes. So you got time to do anything else. So the whole idea is that, in this case, is like, I'm just going to give us a couple of examples. And it's just about kind of putting the right time to it and kind of like making sure that we have at least a quick win. Da 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 da. And I'm seeing like, so you might get more than one. Most likely you're gonna get quite a few as well. But once you do that, there we go. So you will get one quick win. I'll show you what it looks like. So if you're continuing, then you're gonna see your ranked focus and it's gonna look a bit like this. Okay, so it actually gives you the quick win, which hopefully has a bit more of an understanding of what it's like. You can see everything else also where it sits if it's of interest to you. And then you can have this very simple thing to build a very simple plan. All I'm asking us to think about is just a couple of questions, right? And the good thing is that if you're already done, you can share any goal, any quick wins, especially quick wins for accountability is going to be really helpful. So anything you're going to do today or maybe like each week or you're going to start, you might change what the weekly thing is. But for now, what did you write down? If you're done, you can see it. So hopefully you can kind of share with us. That would be amazing. So that could be, for example, block the time. A lot of the time, things like blocking time in your calendar or preparing a draft for that email that you didn't want to send. And then each week, I'm going to, find 5 new people. This is very simple, but. And then it gives you this little plan. You can take a screenshot if you like of this kind of simple little thing. Or you can start over and do it again and again and again. It's just like a little seed of something that we're trying to plan together as well and see where it works. By the way, yay. I'm really glad and thank you for the feedback, by the way, because these apps and I only test it on real people. They get tested in the wild. I test it myself, but I kind of know what to expect. So I appreciate that it's being helpful. And it's just just scrambles what you already have. It scrambles the little ideas that you already have. So if you do have either as a as you said, actually, a goal or a quick win that really jumped out to you, please let us know. I don't know if you did it as well as part of the GW team, if you did your own version of it, or if you thought about a goal yourself that you want to share with us to get us started. But if not, obviously, hopefully you guys have lots and you can reuse it again and again and again. And this is kind of, again, the questions that we're going to get as well in there. And I'll keep an eye out in the chat too. So, I basically not going to give us a bit of space for questions and any other notes you have. I just wanted to say, if you do know anything about us, there's a little QR code and I'm sure you'll get more links just about the school. And then I'll grab any questions. We're all marketing school. So you can reach me out on Instagram, on LinkedIn, wherever, when you find my name, but also when you find the school's name. So if you have any further questions afterwards or something is missed, go and check out what we're up to and what we do. And I can answer further questions that you might have been a bit too shy to ask.